Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on this Tuesday morning, the first day of August. Thanks for tuning in and joining us. It's O'Connor and Company, getting you where you need to go with everything you need to know. It's America's morning show.
I love it.
Man, that was exhausting. Can we take a break? Are we? No, we've got too much to do. Coming up at 7:35, Jim Lehmann, he's the founder of Transparency in Education, talking about what's going on in Frederick County Public Schools. And at 8:05, Bethany Mandel out of Montgomery County, as CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, just put out a very telling document, an internal memo showing what the Maryland School District is talking about internally. They don't want anyone else to hear what they're saying about gender curriculum and sexual curriculum. That is all coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor. She's Julie Gunlock. And joining us right now is Mike Summers, American Petroleum Institute president and CEO. In the midst of a heat wave across much of the country, the Biden administration took advantage of, summer to suggest that you should stop driving your gasoline-powered car and move toward an electric vehicle, which all makes sense, I suppose, until you figure out, Mike Summers, that if we move to electric vehicles the way the Biden administration and the far-left green activists want in this country, we will be so incredibly dependent on China, it's not even worth discussing at this point.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Julie. It's great to be with you. There are three things your listeners need to think about when they're talking about this swift move to electric vehicles mandated by the federal government. One, it's bad for consumers. Two, it's bad for national security. And three, it's actually bad for the environment. Mm-hmm. Your point that this is actually just a gift to China is very important, because we get most of the fuel for the cars that we drive, that your listeners are driving right now, from American products, from American oil and gas. And what they're talking about now is shifting that independence that we have today with American vehicles to China, because most of the products that are used to power an electric vehicle come from China. Lithium, nickel, aluminum, and all the rest. If they're not produced in China, they're refined in China. And that should be a huge concern to all Americans.
Isn't it true, though, that this goes beyond just pushing people to buy EVs, which are more expensive and people just won't be able to afford it? And isn't that the point? Don't they just want people to give up cars altogether? Because complementing this push for EVs is all this, Democrats talking about strengthening the, public transportation system in cities and nationwide. So again, isn't this just a push to get people to give up cars altogether?
Well, I think you really hit on something, Julie. I mean, for many in our government today, the fact that you can't charge an electric vehicle is actually a feature, not a bug. But I think one of the key things that they're thinking about is people who are living in urban environments that don't have to drive long distances. But as you and I both know, this country is powered by the people in the middle. The people that do drive long distances. It's our farmers, and it's our oil and gas producers. It's the people that drive long haul trucks. They don't have the time to stop and charge an electric vehicle, nor do they have the ability, because that network has not been built out to the level that it needs to be for this fast rush to electric vehicles.
Go ahead, Mr. Summers. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna mention that the most important thing that we can be doing right now is for all of us to come together and start thinking about what that vehicle fleet looks like in the future. There are going to be some places that are going to have a high proliferation of electric vehicles, but that's not going to be for everybody. And we need to give Americans a choice on the kind of car that they get to buy.
Mike Summers, what bothers me even more about this latest push, as I said, it happened to be the last week of July, first week of August, when it's always hot. And there's this deceptive approach to it. They're constantly screaming that it is a climate emergency. I've even heard people suggesting that they should treat this like they treated the pandemic. You put through all these extraordinary extra constitutional measures because it's a national emergency, and that's the language they're using. I think it's instructive to look back. This is nearly 15 years ago, in 2009, when we were told then about the imminent climate emergency.
There is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
You have sea ice, which is melting at a rate that the Arctic Ocean now increasingly is exposed. In 5 years, scientists predict we will have the first ice-free Arctic summer.
That was 2009. And those two blowhards that everyone, these well-respected Nobel laureates on climate, in 2009, they said that by 2014, we would have ice-free polar caps. And there's never any repercussions for their lives. There's never ever any repercussions for being completely and totally wrong.
Well, here's the bottom line on this as well, which is that actually this fast push to EVs is actually bad for the environment, because we know right now that for your common electric vehicle, it does not beat a common internal combustion engine, which most Americans currently own, on environmental performance until it hits about 70,000 miles. Because unfortunately, the way that we currently judge an internal combustion engine is solely through the tailpipe. That's when you start judging emissions. For an electric vehicle, it obviously doesn't have any tailpipe emissions. But if you go further back into the cycle, when you're actually mining and finding these products and producing these vehicles, there is a huge environmental impact. And so we need to change the way that we think about these electric vehicles, because the environmental damage that they're going to have on our environment could be very significant, and we just don't know how great it's going to be. And again, you're getting most of those materials from China. And trust me, the environmental standards that are happening in China right now are certainly not up to the level of the United States. And, I've often said that, we currently drive internal combustion engines. But at the same, we also need to think about the fact that the combustion is still occurring. We're still getting a huge source of this from when you plug it into the wall. You're getting it from other sources like coal. And one of the things that we need to be thinking about is that you're going to be moving from internal combustion engines to external combustion engines. And no one is actually talking about that right now.
Well, I'm glad we are, and I appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll hopefully continue to sort of sound the alarm here on the other side. They're the alarmist on their side that the earth is melting and that the oceans are boiling. We'll sound the alarm of how their totalitarian instincts are basically manifest in all of these mandates and basically forcing Americans out of their freedom of choice and their ability to get around the way they most wish to. Mike Summers, thank you for joining us as always, sir.
Great to be with you.
And thank the American Petroleum Institute, by the way, for trying to keep gas and oil ubiquitous, easy to get, and affordable in this country.
Yes.
That's what's so maddening about this. We've got an abundance of it.
Yeah.
We don't have to rely on a foreign country. And if we're able to drill and actually process it here locally and domestically, it'll be incredibly affordable.
That's right. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike. It's 7:15 WMAL. Traffic and weather every 10 minutes first on the device. Speaking of cars, Jamie Whitten, what's happening in the Hadid Carbine?
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Upgrade to a new walk-in shower from Long Baths. Call now to get your free estimate today.
Even Joe Biden has thoughts about the Vince Colonnade Show.
What a stupid son of a...
Join us on the next one, 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Bill Hemmer yesterday reporting immediately following the closed-door testimony of former business partner to Hunter Biden, Devon Archer. It was blockbuster testimony that corroborates so much of the case that Jim Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, and his partners, Jason Smith from Ways and Means and Jim Jordan from Judiciary, have been building all year against the Biden family and showing the corruption. And, oh, by the way, let's not forget, part of this story is the Justice Department's refusal to legitimately and seriously investigate all of this. And there's only two conclusions here. Number one, that the Justice Department just thinks this is business as usual in Washington, which is kind of a problem. Or number two, they know that this is criminal behavior and they're just going to overlook it because, well, It's our guy, right? So here's Bill Hemmer laying out what we learned yesterday.
Archer tells the House investigators that Hunter Biden put then VP Biden on a speakerphone more than 20 times to sell, quote, the brand, in parentheses, in business conversations. And Chad goes on to say that Archer testified that there was a value of adding Hunter Biden to Burisma's board, was the brand. Burisma is the energy company out of Ukraine. The argument was that then Vice President Joe Biden brought the most value to the brand. There's that phrase yet again. Archer also stated that Burisma would have gone under if not for the brand. Wow. In December of 2015, the owner of Burisma, gentleman, the CEO who ran the company, placed constant pressure on Hunter Biden to get help from Washington, D.C. regarding the Ukrainian prosecutor, Viktor Shokin.
And did they get that help from Washington, D.C.? Well, let's just listen to Vice President Biden telling us exactly what happened.
They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch.
That's right. They fired him. They got their $1 billion of U.S. aid. And that was exactly what those Burisma executives wanted. That's what they were pestering Hunter Biden to do. And that's exactly what Hunter Biden's dad did. And now the Democrats trotted out Representative Dan Goldman to respond to this. Who's Dan Goldman? Well, he's been in Congress 6 months. He is self-financed because he's independently wealthy as an heir to the Levi's fortune, and he's in a completely safe blue Democrat district in New York. So, in other words, he's the perfect patsy to try to clean up this mess.
The witness, Mr. Archer, was very clear that Hunter spoke to his father every day. And he indicated that he approximated about 20 times over the course of his 10-year business relationship that he had with Mr. Biden, with Hunter Biden, which would be about twice a year, that Hunter would put his father on speakerphone with whomever was at dinner, and there was no indication that he had any idea who was at dinner with them. It was just a say, hello, I'm at dinner here, and there was nothing related to his business dealings.
His business dealings, he kept using that euphemism, business dealings, business associates, business clients. Let's define our terms. Julie, what business was Hunter and Archer in?
Exactly. And
really, what was the business?
Well, the business was making money for Joe Biden.
By selling access to Joe Biden. So by putting him, I mean, you can take a phone call from your dad all day long. Putting him on the speakerphone while the people who are paying to get access to Joe Biden are in the room, that's a transaction.
But that statement that he just made, I mean, does he think, and he does, he clearly thinks the American public just fell off the turnip truck, because that's not how Washington works. I mean, the idea that the vice president would just call up someone to talk about the weather or stop by Cafe Milano when his son is eating dinner with a Russian oligarch, this is absurd. Of course we know what is happening here. And it's really embarrassing how the Democrats are trying to cover for the president, as well as the many members of the media.
That's right.
But it's not going to last. It just isn't.
Yeah, we'll tell you a little bit of what the New York Times and other members of the media did with this information. I think you can guess, but we'll lay it out for you in a moment. And that Stop by Cafe Milano story to just see Hunter, who happened to be having dinner with oligarchs. We want to delve into that one a bit in a moment, too. It is 7:21, and I want to tell you about...
Well, what we now know, quite frankly, is that the president has been lying. I mean, he lied during the presidential campaign. He lied as president when he had to have his staff repeat that he had no knowledge, no interaction with these business dealings. That's clearly false. I mean, these are accounts of almost 24 calls made with these associates, some of whom are the most corrupt figures in Europe. Where the vice president would call in. That's the point of influence peddling. When Archer says that he was there to sell the brand is influence peddling. And
that's right. That's Jonathan Turley laying this out here. And understand that as you keep hearing, well, they didn't talk business. All you did was say hi. The business is getting Joe Biden on the phone. That is the business. That's the product they were selling.
Yeah.
They didn't have to talk
and
business.
we have some
It's
evidence
irrelevant.
that there was some outcomes that they wanted.
Absolutely.
But you don't need that.
Nope, not for the law, not for this town to see corruption as it is. By the way, the New York Times, it's amazing. I mean, how many times did we hear Joe Biden over the many, many years of this say, I'd never talked to these, I'd never had anything to do with it, I never knew about it, I never talked to my son. New York Times, it has long been known that the elder Mr. Biden at times interacted with his son's business partners. This is old news. We've always known this.
They just do his...
They do.
They just do his bidding.
It's
It's unbelievable.
Because, they're covering their own butts
That's
at
right.
this point,
That's right.
too, by the way. One other thing. You mentioned this. I saw this a lot. Oh, so what? He stopped by a restaurant to say hi to his son. He didn't know who he was having dinner with. Well, he was having dinner with Russian oligarchs, and those Russian oligarchs seem to have dodged the sanctions bullet during the Biden administration and during the Obama administration. There's a shock after Hunter Biden and the Biden family made millions off of them. But there's one other thing. Come on, guys. You know D.C. The president and his the vice president and his motorcade leaving the White House and heading back to the Naval Observatory, which is just a straight shot up Connecticut, DuPont Circle, up Mass Ave, and you're right in the Naval Observatory. But instead, you're just going to make a quick pit stop in Georgetown.
Yeah.
At Cafe Mulatto.
Yeah.
With a motorcade.
Right.
And Secret Service. And please.
That takes some coordination.
We know better. It's 7:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:36 now. It's O'Connor and Company on this first day of August. Thanks for tuning in. Coming up in 30 minutes is going to be Bethany Mandel to give us a update on that whole Montgomery County school system's move to keep parents out of the loop when it comes to instruction, gender and sexual-related instruction of their children. Parents can't opt out right now in MoCo, but we'll see if there's more news about that. That's coming up in 30 minutes. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
And Julie, Frederick County is quickly resembling Montgomery County, shockingly, which is very much at odds with the electorate out there. They've always sort of distinguished themselves in Frederick County as being the anti-Montgomery County. And right now in their school system, it's sort of two sides of the same coin, unless parents actually stand up and do something about it. Joining us now is Jim Lehmann. He's the founder of Transparency in Education. And I'd love to hear from you, Jim, now about the parents' rights movement out there, because I know you've been organizing a lot of rallies and a lot of activism to try to get that school board to be more responsive to the sensibilities of the electorate. What's happening?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that we seem to be the anti-Montgomery County. That seems to be changing pretty rapidly, because whatever's happening in Montgomery County is happening up in Frederick County now. Yeah. And one of the things that has happened is that there's been a policy in place, and this is strictly related to the gender identity and the policies of creating welcoming environments for transgender and non-conforming students. That policy has been in place for about 6 years, and it does a lot of things that we're finding parents don't necessarily agree with. It doesn't require parental notification if a child changes his or her gender. It allows the primary determinant of participation in sports to be chosen gender, not biological gender. Bathroom use, changing areas, locker rooms, overnight lodging, all by chosen gender.
Yeah.
And the more that we talked to parents and created an awareness program, the more parents became involved. So we put a proposal in place in February of this year to change that policy and require parental notification, require sports participation over the age of 11 to be done by biological gender, bathroom use, et cetera, and came back and put something in place that we felt updated it for all of the learnings that have happened over the last 6 years and the types of things that I think welcome all 45,000 students. So we tried to get the attention of the board, and we submitted it. We tried to meet with them on multiple occasions to walk through our justification and our rationale for changing these policy and why it was the best and most fair thing to do for all students. We had medical experts that we included in the policy proposal. We had people from international organizations, 100 citations. The thing was well documented. They refused to meet. So after 5 months of trying to get them to meet with us, they said, we're not going to change the policy. We're going to leave it as it is, and we need to move on to other things. So they left us with no recourse other than to contact some of the legal firms that are working on cases across the country, and actually one of the lawyers that we're dealing with now is the case you mentioned in the lead-in, which is Montgomery County's opt-out policy. And so we brought them up to Frederick last week to explore the possibility of a lawsuit. There's plenty of grounds for it, and right now we're preparing to bring parents into this so that we can take legal action and force Frederick County to change their policies to at the very least, include parents in the notification when their child chooses an alternative gender or displays the symptoms of what is a recognized psychological condition, gender dysphoria. Right now, they will not do it, so the parents are flying blind.
Well, these two lawyers are doing this free of charge. I think that's significant, and I wanted to mention that. And I think that issue, the money involved with suing these powerful school districts, is what sometimes makes parents go, "What's the point? I don't have the money. I don't have the time to put into suing the school district." Are there any thoughts to organizations, nonprofit organizations standing up to help parents? I mean, you've got your case here, and you've got this great free legal advice. But
in this case, I think it's First Liberty Institute.
Is okay, but
yeah.
So there. But I feel like throughout the country there are parents that are in these situations and don't have free legal advice.
Yeah.
But is there going to be more help for parents who want to take on these powerful school districts?
Yes, more and more organizations are funneling money into helping parents, and more law firms around the country are taking these cases on, like our lawyers are pro bono. And a lot of the parents are very concerned about not just that once we alleviate them of the problem of worrying about money and so forth, they're worried about the backlash that could happen, whether their kids get affected by it in school or whether the parents themselves are somehow affected in the community by doing this. So there's an anonymity piece of this as well. We can, as some of the cases in Montgomery County done, the plaintiffs, the parents, and the students can remain anonymous in this.
Yeah.
But as I keep telling parents over and over again, it's not what you should be worried about is not what will happen if you act. It's what is happening and what will happen if you don't. Yeah. And parents need to step up and sign up as we're starting to go on our campaign of assessing who has actual cases we can bring for these law firms. We're telling parents, get involved.
Mr. Lehmann, the way you just described the new policies with regard to locker rooms and bathrooms in Frederick County, let me just summarize. Based on the actions of the Frederick County School Board, 14-year-old girls will be exposed to male genitalia without their consent. That in some places would be called sexual assault. What would these members of the school board say to that if they were confronted with that reality? You raised money, you got elected to the school board so you could ensure that a 14-year-old girl is exposed to male genitalia against their consent. Would they even acknowledge that? What's their response?
They don't have a response, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have tried, and I took the case of boys competing on girls' sports teams, which is allowed, and interscholastic sports, it's allowed, and it's happening. Most parents don't realize that in Frederick County, it's actually happening. So I asked them, give us your justification. Individually, as a collective group, give me your justification. What's your rationale for telling parents that this is the fair and right thing to do? I asked several times, and they did not give an answer. We asked the questions about bathrooms. And the question about bathrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, overnight stays, got no answer. The only answer we got was on parental notification, where they said this could harm children whose parents do not want them to be exposed, do not want them to be transgender. They might throw them out of the house, physical or mental abuse. So they're putting all parents in the one category, which is irrational, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So we're all going to harm our children if we don't agree with them. So that's sort of a thinking, again, led us back to the point. They have no answers. There's only one member of the board who actually believes in what we're saying has spoken up and given us their opinions, but the remaining 6 have remained silent.
I hope they're proud. This is their legacy, that they ran for office and knocked on doors and got all those votes so that they could ensure that a 14-year-old girl is exposed to a naked male body against her consent.
if you're not willing to tell us what your reasons are for being there, if you're not willing to be transparent with this, then don't run for office, right?
Jim Lehmann, transparencyandeducation.net, transparencyandeducation.net. If you're in Frederick County, join the movement. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, guys. My pleasure.
Oh, my gosh, we have so much critter news to get to, and I don't know how we're going to jam it all in here. Let's start with the bears. As you know, bear season is coming up in Maryland. State of Maryland is doing a lottery for bear hunters. If any of you win that, the O'Connor and Company team will come along with you to entertain you while you're hunting bear. We want to that. Number two, there's a great story coming out of Burbank where they've got their own bear problem there. But the bears there get hot. They climb over the little fence and they jump in the pool. Did you see that bear?
This is so cute. Obviously, this bear will kill you.
He will rip your face off.
Yes, but I can't. I can't. I know. I hate people who make wild animals adorable and cute because they will kill you. But this is very cute. He's chilling in the pool. He was hot.
The Burbank bear. That's right near Hanna-Barbera Studios, by the way. This is where Yogi Bear.
So you know this area. Is that a really fancy area?
It's pretty fancy.
Rondon.
Oh yeah, anything in LA that starts with Paseo, it doesn't get more Pasadena than that, right? All right. Meanwhile, here's another bear story out of China. The Chinese zoo is denying that they're using humans dressed up as bears because they don't have an. But there's a picture here that is a man. Look at that picture. That is a guy. That is a guy with a giant bear head on.
It's not even a good costume.
No, it's not. It's embarrassing. Well, remember when the Chinese zoo had a giant fluffy like Mastiff dog and they sold it as a lion?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite stories. Well, you go to the zoo in China and it's like, well, you get what you get. That's the best you can get.
Yeah. Along the same lines.
Well, they make these animal suits very, very realistic.
Well, they have, yes.
Which brings us to this guy who now identifies as a dog. What's stopping him? He's a man trapped, or he's a dog trapped in a man's body.
Yeah.
So he got a border collie costume created custom for him. He's from Japan, by the way, I believe. And it's very lifelike. It's very realistic. He looks like Lassie.
Yes.
It's like if Timmy were caught in a well, I would expect this guy to come and tell me and warn me.
It is. It looks like a very large dog.
Yeah.
An unrealistically large
well,
dog.
As soon as you see him start trying to walk on all fours, you realize, well, that ain't no dog.
It's a costume.
That's a man, baby. It's a Japanese man. He has not revealed his identity because he doesn't want to be mocked at work, which is fair.
He spent 2 million yen, which equals $12,000 on this lifelike costume.
That's right. And he was seen taken for his very first public walk this weekend, a German television station. By the way, that's 12,000 pounds, $20,000. Let me just do the currency exchange there.
Who took him for a walk?
Ever since I
Who
was
is
a
this
small
woman who took him for a walk?
Some German. Ever since I was a small child, I wanted to be an animal. I think it is a desire to transform. I've thought about it since I can remember. So honestly, what is your moral and principled and intellectual argument against? If you are pro 100% the transgender agenda,
you can identify as anything.
What honestly, why
really?
What is your argument against this?
Yeah.
There is none.
None.
Because we're not allowed to have principles, values, and morals anymore.